PP.
Hello, can you
Hello,
hear
I
us?
can hear you.
Oh, that's great. I don't have my cam on.
That is fine.
Okay, that's fine. Great. Yeah. Um, so what did you want to ask? Yeah, I have met CosmicSkeptic and Rationality Rules in person before. I'm actually going to be doing a video responding to the
Ooh.
philosophy kind of behind it, because I know that a lot of people have, obviously yourself included, have spoken about obviously everything that's went on.
Hmm.
But I just want to go through Alex's philosophy and maybe deconstruct the arguments he's made. I know that some people have already done that a little bit. I even saw Joey talk about the logic behind some of it.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously, I think it's pretty plain in a lot of the time, but I think maybe a more in depth
Yeah,
review.
I think it'd be really good because obviously your crowd is the philosophy crowd, and I think no, regardless of like who makes these posts, it can be like people want to hear the response. When someone who's really big comes out and says, "Oh no, well, I'm no longer convinced this is appropriate," whatever that really even means. And yeah, we had issues before. I was trying to mention to people, that the last thing I did on Cosmic Skeptic was actually with you. We did a long response to Alex debating Mikhaila Peterson, and
Yeah,
he was saying stuff then, and I didn't have a very positive view, and I thought this is not very good. But yeah, that would be really good if you could make a response to what's happened, and yeah, do you mind sharing, like, as you're not going to be here long, like some things about your opinion on everything that's happening, because I haven't heard
yeah.
it.
I mean, they're polite guys. Like they're nice
Hmm.
enough, that they're very well to do in the sense that they hold themselves well and they're well mannered and
Hmm.
and that's that kind of thing. Alex has never been personally offensive towards us or anything like
Hmm.
that. And neither has Stephen. Um, but I will say, like in terms of meeting them, I know that the moral positions I think are quite contradictory. I
Yeah.
think that I think in terms of that philosophy in general, um, more so with Stephen since he's an objectivist. So he believes that morality is objective, and I know
All
Alex
right.
does now too. But um, the Alex has kind of never really let that kind of subjective side go, and so always seems to sort of return to it. Um, and but on the other side, Stephen has always sort of been arguing for the objectivity of ethics, which means that it should be separate from personal preference and the like. So you would expect a kind of, if anything, a more a greater amount of zeal to come from him. But if anything, it's less. But anyway, the main thing I've found was really just the willingness to make excuses for small behaviors, sort of cultural norms. In his almond debate with Almond Navabadi, Cosmic Skeptic justified killing of animals, saying that if it was the only, like, if killing an animal, you're not causing it suffering, just killing it was to be wrong, it would only be wrong like how lying is wrong. And I mean, lying is wrong in general, right? Like people would say like lying is
Hmm.
wrong, but
But
to say
wow.
that it's comparable to murder,
Yeah.
as a vegan should say it, is quite a strange thing to say.
Wow. I haven't heard that. I don't remember that.
Yeah, that was when he was vegan as well.
Yeah.
Another thing he said in the past was essentially based upon the practicability of people doing it. He's talked about whether people with certain allergies and stuff, and maybe they don't, maybe it's not practicable for them.
Hmm.
He also seems to not consider animals as having value in themselves and is
No.
willing to dismiss that value for the point of convenience. And and there was also the whole time he tried to was it rewrite the definition of vegan in order to avoid the word exploitation.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Um,
remember that.
yeah,
Yeah. He's done a lot. And then Joey saying that he asked, "Oh, what's the practicability, in being vegan in France?" And then like Joey found like loads of vegan options around him. And and then I remember people were saying, I can't recall the exact conversation, but I do remember being very annoyed when he was on a podcast or a live or something like that with Earthling Ed, and he was just kind of saying all sorts of things of like, oh, when would it be like fine to like, can I eat an animal? Like, I think he even asked that, like, can I eat this animal? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
No,
No,
but
no,
I remember him talking to
I don't
Ned,
want
I
to
think
say it wrong.
twice. But yeah, I remember like I think a lot of the time, it comes across as if he's just proposing the alternative or kind of thought experiment, and so
Hmm.
you often, kind of give him a break. But I think it's come, I think it's come pretty clear that his position is not to consider animals as valuable beyond it being sort of quote unquote his moral system. And I think this is where, in my first ever response to him, and the first time I met him, in many ways, I think it ties into this. Is that the first ever response I had, to Alex was when he made that first video, a meat eater's case for veganism, and my response was, I appreciate that, you're considering going vegan, but the argument you're using is terrible,
Yeah.
um, and this is going to end up with essentially you being not vegan again, and push comes to shove, this is where we are.
Hmm.
And I think that in many ways it is tied to that original philosophical position, in that he never really accepted that animals have value in and of themselves, or that there is an objectively right or wrong thing to do in reference to something that goes beyond his personal opinions and beliefs about the things that are going on.
Hmm.
And then, and to give it an anecdotal sort of standpoint, is like the first time I met him, in terms of like, first time we sat down and had a conversation, was in Oxford. And it was me, him, and Stephen sat across from each other from the table having breakfast. Well, I arrived late, as usual. So
Yeah, that's
I arrived late,
classic
yeah.
PP.
Yeah, 100%. So I arrived a little bit late, but I was staying outside of Oxford because it was cheaper. So I had to get into Oxford in the morning. So I had arrived and they're having breakfast and they were hungover, and I didn't even notice they had finished breakfast. And Alex said to us, he said, you're probably curious about why there's an egg on me plate, and I was supposed to be a vegan at this point." But I hadn't even noticed, and I said, "Oh, well, I mean, I guess, yeah. What's?" And he's like, "Well, essentially, I ordered the vegan breakfast, but they've gave us it with an egg on, and I wasn't sure whether to send it back or not. So I just kept it." And he's like, "I know Peter Singer talks about
Yeah, I
this,
was gonna say
you know."
Peter Singer. Here we go. That's
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And I said, "Well, I would have sent it back because you discipline it. It's about supply and demand. Well, it's about the individual action based approach. Essentially, you send it back in order to let the institution know that if they continue to make this mistake, they will continue to suffer greater economic losses as a result."
Hmm.
And I said that back to him. He's like, and he sort of took it on board, but didn't really, I think, really acknowledge it, and then sort of moved on. And I think that this is the same problem that's persisted through time. It's the same point where he thinks everyone can have a sort of a multiplicity of ethics, um, even if they're contradictory, and that be maintained. And then on top of that, in terms of individual action based, political movements, he doesn't see the efficacy of it, and I don't think he actually sees it as a means of bringing around change. But then I just don't understand why he doesn't
Yeah.
see, even if he didn't see it as a means of bringing around change, why he still wouldn't see actively funding it as even increasing the political power of the opposition.
Yeah.
The negation of your political position by funding those who will actively politically oppose you, in the legal system. And whether it's trying to ban certain words and the uses of certain words, whether it's trying to create propaganda campaigns, whether it's lobbying politicians, whatever it may be. So I don't know. I think that Alex hasn't really thought these things through.
No, and just to your point before, yeah, it's fine to like ask, when it would be acceptable to eat animals. If you've been vegan for a long time, we want to hash out, what the philosophy even entails. But yeah, combined with all the other things that he was saying, it just made me so suspicious. And the thing about, in hospitality, where you send food back, that really irritates me. And I did work in hospitality, and I saw so many times I worked at like a vegetarian place that did loads of vegan options. They would make an error, and it's like, well, if it comes back, then that's a good thing. It helps with people realizing, oh, we have to be more careful about what we send out, because there was one time where someone ended up being given nuts and they're allergic. Like, people should get what they order. Like, I don't know why when vegans say, I'm going to send this back because this isn't vegan and I ordered something vegan, this is such a problem, and we're expected to just be like, oh, don't complain, eat the non-vegan products. And but yeah, as you say, he's not really understanding the efficacy. He's very the efficacy objections, the inefficacy objections rather, would be something that he probably signs off on, but I just don't understand it at all. So it'd be good if you make a video going through all of that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, happily. I mean, one of the things that I think is sort of, I think one of what people kind of pick up on is that he's a bit of a pick me vegan.
Mm-hmm.
He's not very willing to stand against other people in a way that is um that means he has the courage to be disliked. He seems to be very
Yeah.
acutely aware of other people's positions and other people's views on him. And I understand that his channel wasn't meant to be a vegan
No.
advocacy channel,
No.
and he didn't have to make it that.
He
That's
didn't have to. No, he
so
he got all involved with it. I was like pleasantly surprised. I was like, wow, he's had this channel and he's so passionate about this that he's really taken the time to integrate it into his content. But something
yeah,
went wrong.
yeah. Well, I will say I think that things have obviously been bad. I think from the very start, and it's been a cumulative chain. But I think that the most impactful conversation that I think Alex has had that has demonstrated his incompatibility with the vegan philosophical position. And I mean vegan philosophical position. I don't mean like specifically my vegan philosophical position, which, I might think it is correct. But I mean just the definition of veganism is what was his talk with Mikhaila, the one that we covered. I think that really demonstrated that he
Yeah.
was not in line with veganism. He didn't try to even question her outrageous claims. I mean,
No.
outrageous claims at some points, like empirical claims, which you would have to provide an empirical basis for. And yet is now spouting the same kind of fear mongering that she was, in that respect, in the way that she was going on in the video. Um, and I think that I'm not sure, but I would not be surprised if it's a pandering to that kind of audience, and maybe that's the audience he's now aiming at. And and I hate to say it, but when you see figures like this in movements who are supposedly aware of the philosophy behind it, move backwards and forwards, and in such a way as to not really consider the object of harm of their influence when they've got such large followings, it makes you think that they are essentially shills.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying what will get them views and make them money, and that is, I mean, well, I think we can all agree, whether you are vegan or not vegan, that someone should live by their principles. And if they spout something that they do not themselves follow, then they can be incredibly dangerous, and that's a demagogue, and
Mm-hmm.
they're the plague of democracy.
Yeah, with the Mikhaila Peterson, like, my opinion on it. We were there for like over 3 hours talking about it, weren't we? I really like, again, I know Rationality Rules is annoyed that people are speculating, but Alex has left this so vague that it kind of leads you to trying to fill in the gaps. And like for me, I really think Mikhaila Peterson has had her nasty tendrils and really made CosmicSkeptic worry about the health, because you remember when he was like, well, it could well be the case that you can't really trust the science that's out there, and if we are actually leading people astray, by telling them to involve themselves in something that's really harmful to them, that'd be really bad. And like, God knows what conversation they might have had off screen. And Mikhaila Peterson, she must be very what's what I'm looking for, influential or persuasive, because her whole gig is anecdotes, and she manages to have an audience and change people's minds and change their entire like diet off that alone. That's all
Yeah.
she's got.
Well, I will
So
say that even if you look at our father, and like he is raised that, right?
mhm,
And his ethical position, and I was going to do a video on Jordan actually at some point soon. Mainly because of, like, obviously I know Nietzsche and I've read Nietzsche and Jordan's read Nietzsche and he's a big Nietzsche a fan of Nietzsche. But the way Jordan takes Nietzsche is to kind of be this hyper individualist, which Carefree Wandering, another great philosophy channel, I recommend everyone check them out,
mhm,
pulled him up for. And one of the things that I don't think has been discussed enough was essentially Jordan Peterson's likeness to the Nietzschean conception of a priest. And it's this idea of a cult like figure who sort of taints and poisons themselves in order to gain wealth and power from the upper classes to maintain their supremacy over the lower classes, whilst essentially gaining their own political agenda. And the way they do that is to essentially create an ideology which they taint themselves with, half adopt it, poison themselves with, and then spout it to the masses and create a kind of cult like following. And if
mhm,
anything, I think that's exactly what his daughter's done as well. I think that she's got a very it's entirely
mm,
based on anecdote.
yeah,
It is a cult, and it's
mhm.
used to maintain her political position whilst taking other people against their own interests. And he might see it as a positive thing from what I've seen of him, but I think that's what he's taught her to do, and I think that's what they do.
Would you mind, because obviously vegans get accused of being part of a cult all the time, and it's quite a strong word, with the Mikhaila Peterson, like, I'm not too familiar with her community, and I could gather from the way that she addresses herself why it might be a cult, but could you just, because there's some non-vegans in the chat, kind of substantiate how you believe it to be a cult rather than just like a community?
So yeah, I think that it is a a group that is devoted to a particular form of, I don't want to say religion because it doesn't have to be, but ideological reverence to an object or a figure without rational justification, without being able to provide any sort of meaningful reasoning behind it, and it usually leads to extreme actions and um, sort of
Dogma.
zealot,
Yeah.
yeah, zealot dogmatic belief structures,
Yeah.
and even to the point in which it can become dangerous or detrimental to the individuals involved. But it's sort of hallmarked by an unwillingness, not an inability to ask themselves questions, but an unwillingness to question the dogma.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing that in my mind raises the alarm bell, because I see she says she doesn't want to debate. She doesn't even believe in the science to begin with, but then she'll use. I'm pretty sure she used the science that Sean Baker, was responsible for, like, monetarily wise, of that study that was like not very high in the hierarchy of evidence at all. I'm pretty sure she used that. But she will state, oh no, I don't even believe in the science to begin with. I don't want to debate because I'm like not very good at it. But then she will bring on people and have conversations with them, just kind of supporting what's happening. And I think she did bring on Alex. Like, this is what makes me wonder, okay? And again, forgive me for my speculation, but you know how I was like, well, why did she bring on Alex and then realize that he didn't really push back? Could it well be the case that she brought him on knowing that he maybe had doubts and wanted to talk about it? I don't know, obviously, can't tell, but now I'm starting to think, oh, she brought him on. He's this vegan. She knows he's having doubts because they're talking behind the scenes, so he won't really push back all that much. And
Yeah,
he
but I
didn't.
think I think I think that she might be an opportunist, but I think he's presented the opportunity, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
it's, that I think that's the
Oh yeah,
I think
he doesn't get like a free pass or anything. It's not, that, oh, she's her tendrils have come. I do think they have, but he is still, he is still somebody with autonomy, and so yeah. Sorry,
yeah,
carry
yeah. I
on.
mean, it's not even just that. I mean, like, I think that in general, I think he reached out to them at the Oxford Union. Um and if anything, like, I don't know why. I think, was it the Cambridge Union?
I
I
think
think it was the Oxford
Cambridge.
Union. Was it
Oh yeah, I
Cambridge?
think so.
Might
Yeah,
have been
yeah, yeah,
either.
yeah. When
But I remember
when
that.
Michaela came to England and spoke, that was Cambridge.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know how any philosopher, well, any self-respecting philosopher could have watched a discussion like that, well, her speech,
Hmm.
and not wanted to lobotomize themselves.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, it's not
Oh, it was
like it
Oxford.
was.
Okay.
There's no science in it. And if we're talking empirics, if we're talking a matter of what is an objective truth, I would expect to see some sort of, and that this is supposed to have a moral. This has, for Alex, supposedly, incredible moral importance, arguably the largest and most horrific moral calamity of our time. So
And he said as
this,
much a few times, hasn't
yeah,
he? Yeah.
and he has said as much, yeah.
Yeah.
So watching someone spout what is propaganda used to promote not only the opposition to your philosophy, but in fact an inversion of your philosophy, which promotes absolute self-indulgence around the consumption of animal products and the inconsideration of animals, uh, as a necessity, should
Hmm.
be seen as absolutely like awful,
Hmm.
horrific. I mean, to be honest with me, I think someone saying such a thing would, if anything, cause me to more strongly oppose their views. So I don't know
Hmm.
how. I think that the only thing that can really explain Alex's actions is that Alex thought he could gain something from these actions, and that his position on veganism had more to do with appealing, with either being a contrarian or appealing to a community, let's say the vegan community, than it did on actually bringing around animal liberation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, we're speculating, aren't we? But again, when he makes it so unclear why he's doing something, or anything like that, then what are we supposed to do, really?
Well, I mean, look at it like this. Would you ever use the term seafood to describe
No, you wouldn't.
fish?
You wouldn't objectify. He's already talking like, well, he was before talking like a non-vegan, in my opinion, but
Yeah, he
yeah,
was.
already
Yeah.
talking like, like a non-vegan. And just so you know, by the way, if you keep bringing alt accounts in while you're in timeout, they will be banned. There's some Carnus coping in chat today, PP.
No, that is terrible.
Sorry, that's why I sound a bit
No, no,
distracted.
it's all right.
Our brains, we're like everything's happening, and we're just expected to deal with it all at once. Like,
Oh no, I don't know. I don't know how that. Yeah,
yeah,
it is.
pain. And
But there is an issue there. Like, I think he does, like, to promote a euphemism for animal
yeah,
products. Like, surely, like, he's already created that mental distance where he doesn't see them as suffering creatures anymore.
no.
And he didn't explain why fish. And I know he's going to make a video on that, he says, but if anything, this seems like, if he really, if he thought, if he had a problem, I just do not see why he would not have reached out to vegans, like the
Hmm.
community. Why he wouldn't have even said, I've spoken to a doctor, I've had my bloods done. I don't know how, I've got this health condition. I'm really struggling to deal with it. What can I do here? But it doesn't seem to be like that.
No, and he
Um,
is saying it's not just like, see, because people have been saying, okay, well, if you really had a problem, want to eat an animal, and people who had like are accepting or understanding that like certain animals might not even be sentient, then I think he would have said, okay, well, it's bivalves, because I've been hearing they're not even sentient or something like that. Like, it's not that, and as well as that, it wouldn't just be them, because he did say, as far as I remember, like, and other animals or other products. So
yeah,
I think I think he's on the grass fed steak. Like, I'm not even lying. I think he's on the grass fed steak.
I think if he really has, I think as an individual, I think that if he really has Like I think what's like sad, what I find very sad is almost the like why would you sacrifice what I would consider your soul? Like why would you sell your soul um for what? Like what is he really going to gain from this? If you truly did like to sell what to promote what is supposedly um to this man, it has been like the greatest moral calamity that the world has ever seen, the suffering beyond human comprehension.
Hmm.
And he's talked about this in great detail,
Yeah.
and to compartmentalize, switch that off, this I think will only end up eating him alive. I think that if he did make any connection, I think give this enough time, and I think that this is going to cause some real problems with him.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask actually if you knew him personally. Do you know if he's been to like a vigil or a farm or a slaughterhouse or anything like that? Like seen an animal, like who's a direct victim of the industry?
I don't know if he has seen anything like that. To be honest, I know that he's obviously seen the footage, which
Mm.
I would expect to be enough. I don't think that you need to even like. I mean, it's good to see the animals. I see the animals at like a local farm not
Mm-hmm.
far from me. Like I go and see them. It's like probably one of the highest welfare farms ever, really, because it's not really a farm. It's more of like a petting thing,
Mm-hmm.
and but they kill the pigs, right? In the end, like this is the thing. So, like you see these really happy pigs, and if anything, this just makes it worse. I'm like, why are we going to kill the like they're playing with each other and stuff, and you're like, right, they're just dogs. Like you see them, and you're like, oh, it's just a happy little animal. It's like a child, and it's walking around, it's grunting, it's happy, and then you see it's going to get killed. So it's kind of one of those things where like seeing the animals does make a difference and it has an impact. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that he's cognitive. He's a philosopher.
Yeah.
He's able to make
Those jumps and like understand what that would actually look like in real life.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to be relying on pathos when he has like logos. He
Mm-hmm.
has the logic necessary to understand right and wrong, and he's already come to the conclusion that, as Lewis just said, it's the greatest moral emergency of our time. So how could he go from that position to, I'm in France and it's looking a bit tricky to be vegan right now? How would you define practicability?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm the most logos oriented person, but I think I am quite. I mean, maybe you can tell me and call me out if I'm not, but I do think, I am driven by logic quite a lot. But even for me, like when I've gone to farms, and it's weird that you say, they're like dogs, because when I've been to pig farms, I've heard them like what sounds like barking, and it's so weird, and looking at them and how they behave, they are just like dogs with hooves and that have weirdly human like eyes.
Yeah,
And I don't know, like I was at a pig. I don't know if you saw the start of this stream, but or if you've seen my new channel that I have, but I've posted a video of yesterday when I went to a gas chamber, where they gas pigs to death. And I don't know, I just something about literally them being in front of you, even if you are like logically minded. You can smell them, you can hear them screaming like there, and knowing that like they're gonna be murdered like in 10 minutes. I don't know, it fucks with you. I don't
yeah.
know.
Well, I think, I mean, it even engages your practical reasoning, right? Like, so, like, it's you can see for yourself the sentience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. I can't really give a reason.
No.
I think to be honest, like I think what I despise about all of this is the sort of profiteering mindset, that's being used. I think really, I see it as a means of Alex trying to gain something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only thing, because otherwise, like if he was genuinely having problems, I don't see why he wouldn't have tried to resolve this quietly.
Yeah, you
Um,
would talk to many, like so many people would have been like very happy to help him. He has access to basically any dietetics expert, like any one of them would probably be like, yeah, I know you, let's do this.
Yeah, exactly. If he's having any real issues, he could have at least reached out for help, but I've not heard anything of him reaching out for help. I've not seen a video in which he's asked anyone for help. He asked, Joey, but when he asked Joey for help, it was just, how would you define practicability? And it had nothing to do with health anyway.
No.
So yeah, like I don't know. I'm
Hmm.
not gonna, I don't think I've got too much more to add.
No,
other
you did say you would be
than
for 10 minutes, but so
yeah.
sorry I've taken even more of your
No, no,
time,
no,
but
it's absolutely fine. I mean, I think, I stand with the whole vegan community and being incredibly disappointed.
yeah.
Um, and maybe, maybe it's not, maybe, the way I was going to approach it is, with this sort of philosophical take, but also like, try to revive his humanity, because I don't know if he's simply lost touch with the philosophy and he's perhaps engaged in a kind of greedy, self-centered philosophy like Nietzschean philosophy or something of late. And maybe that's what sent him more um, self-indulgent, um,
Hmm.
rather than necessarily affirming what is what I would clearly argue is an objective value.
Right. Yeah, well, yeah, he could have, upon talking to that crowd more, been exposed to a different philosophy, maybe. So I'm excited to see your video on it, because it will be like a different take, and it will be important because that's his world. You're in his world.
Well, I'm not. That's the thing. I'm in the same like sort of philosophy, like sort of side of things. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm very critical of Alex's philosophy forever. I don't think Alex has ever had like, to be entirely honest with you, ever had a very strong philosophical stance. I do think his philosophy is subpar. That's probably a bit spicy, but like
You always
you
have
know,
said that, yes.
I have always
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with Stephen. Unfortunately, rationality rules. The philosophy is of that of a layperson,
Hmm.
rather than like, even though Alex is a Oxford graduate, he's better now in terms of his theology. His theology's way better, but his ethics, it was. I mean, it's better than Stevens, but I don't think it's ever really hit a point in which I would say, you know what, actually, he knows what he's talking about, and maybe that's the issue.
Yeah. Well, when do you think you're going to make the video?
Well, I've got another video to make before that. I've got a
Oh,
deadline,
okay.
so
Oh,
I've got
okay.
hopefully in the next few days.
Hopefully in the next few days. Okay, that'd be cool. And you're making another video. Thank God for that, because not enough content, PP. Come on now.
Yeah, I know, I know. The next one's on Hegel, so
Okay, classic.
classic. Yeah. What else?
What else? Okay, well, thank you for hanging here for half an hour, and thank you for giving your thoughts, because I was really curious. Um, and Conan would like to debate you again in the chat. I don't know if you've seen that.
I can't even remember debating them.
I've debated Conan. It was
I've debated.
pretty.
I think I've debated so many people now.
Yeah, you just forget, don't you? Like, I can't remember what you said.
Hundreds of people now. Like, it's
Yeah,
just, yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, once I get the time, 100%. Yeah.
yeah.
Sure.
Okay, and yeah, Ansgar was wanting to. I don't know if you remember talking to them on my channel when I was live about utilitarianism, and it became this thing where I was like, oh wait, guys, we'll do this another time. But they do want to talk to you again once you have the time again. So
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
come on the
Just
channel again soon.
get them in touch with us, and we'll sort it out as well. Yeah.
All
100%. We'll
right,
sort it out. Right.
super.
Well.
Okay, thank you so much, PP, and I'll see you in the chat. Yeah,
Yeah. That
thank you.
I'll probably be there and not there, as I
There,
were.
yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Right.
That's how I
Right.
usually am. So thank you, PP.
Thank you, and thank you
Bye.
everyone for watching.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, bye, bye. Right, look. Subscribe to PP right now. Link is in the chat.